please mute your microphone. Please keep it muted while you are not addressing the council, just so we can avoid any interference. I greatly appreciate that, and I am going to turn it over to Chairman Butkus. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Butkus, the Vice Chair of the Connecticut Historic Preservation Council, and I'm calling to order our January 10th, 2024 meeting. Attending this morning are the following council members: Beth Ackley, Vincenzia Aduse, Beth Burgess, myself, Paul Butkus, Leah Glazer, Andy Horowitz, and Sarah Sportman. A quorum is therefore present. The following is the Historic Preservation Council's format and review of public comment procedures. Given the online format of today's meeting, and for those who are visitors today, we want to review and explain our procedures. The order of presentation. I'll read each motion and ask for the motion to be moved and seconded. Staff will present the agenda item to the council. Council members will have an opportunity to ask questions, and if called upon, staff, a representative of the organization may offer statements or address council's questions. For members of the public who wish to speak to the agenda item, we ask that you identify yourself and your affiliation. After all questions have been addressed and statements made, a roll call vote will be taken. If members of the public have letters and written statements they wish to submit to the record, please email them to Jonathan Kinney at jonathan.kinney@ct.gov. The Historic Preservation Council takes statements from members of the public, but does not respond to questions. Lastly, please only address the particular agenda item being addressed at that time. The following is the Historic Preservation Council's policy regarding conflicts of interest. The Historic Preservation Council votes on matters which provide leadership, service, and economic benefits to property owners, consultants, local governments, and not-for-profit organizations. Given this responsibility and to maintain the highest professional standards in the discharge of our duties, it's important to maintain a strong code of ethics for all council members and department employees. In order to avoid possible violations of the Department of Economic and Community Development ethics statement, it's necessary for the council to be aware of any situations in which there's a real, potential, or apparent conflict of interest involving anyone here. A conflict of interest may occur when a public official's participation in agency matters results in personal financial gain. All council and staff have been provided a copy of the DECD ethics statement and governing state statutes. Having reviewed them today in today's agenda, members of the council and staff are now asked to disclose any affiliation with entities or projects that may create a conflict of interest as defined by the agency policy and pursuant to Connecticut General Standards Statute I-79 through I-89, entitled the Code of Ethics for Public Officials. Once disclosed, the member or staff may recuse themselves from that particular agenda item. Having read this statement, are there any council or staff members who would like to disclose conflict of interest to any of the items on today's agenda? Hearing none, we will move forward. Item 4, the review and approval of minutes and transcripts. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from last December 6th, 2023 meeting?
So moved, Paul.
Thank you, Beth Burgess. And a second?
V, second.
Thank you, V. Were there any corrections or comments to the meeting minutes? Hearing none, I think without objection, we can approve the meeting minutes as written. Thank you. Just want to keep things moving along instead of doing the roll call. All right, item 5. State Historic Preservation Grants Action Items 5A are unfinished action items. We'll have to do a two-part vote on this. One is to recall it to the table. So the first motion is a motion to recall this Historic Preservation Restoration Fund grant for the town of Durham, for the Durham Public Library. Sorry, can I have a motion to recall? Any council members like to make a motion, please?
V.
Thank you, V.
I'll second that, Paul.
Thank you, Beth. And since Sarah's not here, I think we'll just take a vote to make it official that we're going through. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
V,
Aye.
Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I will abstain just for consistency. Leah Glazer,
Aye.
Andy Horowitz,
Aye.
and Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
Okay, so we're now back onto the table. And a motion to approve. I need a motion and a second. We could share the wealth, council members.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Beth. And a second.
I'll second, Leah.
Thank you, Leah. Okay, discussion.
It's me. Good morning, everyone. So the Durham Public Library first presented this application in September of 2022. And council recommended that they take a step back and apply for a survey and planning grant to have drawings done. So Silver Petroselli completed those drawings and updated the application. They're on the call. I believe I see David Stein. So I've listed the scope of work, and any questions I can help with, just let us know.
Aaron, I'll just start off and I'll open it up to everybody else. The drawings are stamped on the cover as construction documents. Is that correct?
I believe so. Let me open the file. So the survey and planning grant was to cover up to construction documents. And so we wanted them to be ready to kind of hit the ground running. And we know that Silver Petroselli will be managing the bid process and the construction process. David, do you want to chime in too?
Yeah, so these drawings are substantially complete and, ready upon approval to prepare a bid and to get that moving, as weather permits. So yes, we've taken the drawings. They are, essentially substantially complete with any comments that would potentially come out of today's meeting, and then move forward, as Aaron mentioned.
Okay, I'll open up for council members for questions.
I have a quick question.
Beth Ackley?
Yes, Beth Ackley. Quick question on the, and maybe I can just describe this so everybody doesn't have to look, but on the estimated cost sheet, I was just having trouble matching up items with numbers. And on the estimated costs, like the top lines are architectural and engineering for the first line and pre-construction services for the second. It looks like architectural and engineering is 35,000 and pre-construction services is 8,500. And if I may not be reading that right, but if I am, is that architectural and engineering? I guess it's architectural and engineering pre-construction services, but I'm just confused about that 35,000.
Sure. So I think the pre-construction services is what was, and hopefully Mary can help with this one, is what was covered in the survey and planning grant. So that was the drawings that they completed. And then the architectural and engineering costs are the help to manage the project and finalize any bid documents and drawings. Is that correct?
Yeah, I could jump in. So the initial 85, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but it all sounds correct. The 8,500 was when we were first onboarded to the project. We, we did an evaluation and determined the conditions and then came up with a few alternative sketches. So that was part of that first piece. And then the second part that you're referencing is our design of the documents that you've had presented to date, and then taking it through bid and then final construction, administration, and oversight.
Which is the 8,500, right? As the bid.
Yeah, so the 8,500 was the work that we already had done as initial, as an initial sort of schematic and conceptual, design. And then the remaining piece of the 30 or so thousand that you referenced was the completion of, and the construction administration. So design and construction administration.
Okay. So I guess just a question from Aaron and for Aaron and Mary, are these all things that can go in this grant?
Yes, so we consider that project management. And so there's a small percentage or a percentage that can be covered, and some of it is covered by the survey and planning grant as well.
So the total project cost, the applicant share, the 182,700, that's the total grant request. So I guess nothing is, if some of that is survey and planning, I'm not sure it's been taken out yet. Or maybe I'm misreading it. Oh, wait a minute. I see. This is okay.
This might be the, so there's, this is the update. Let's see. So 8,500 is the construction administration. The 3,500 architectural and engineering.
35,000.
35,000, I'm sorry. That was for project management.
So that's this construction manager's fee.
Yeah, so it looks like architectural and engineering fee. So I think what needs to, so I don't think any of these costs are things that were included in the survey and planning grant after all. So I think these are all HRF costs.
I think so, Aaron. I think the survey and planning grant was only around $13,000 for the plans and stuff. I don't think that's included in this budget.
Yep, I misspoke. So it's all HRF costs, which can all be covered by this grant.
Okay, thanks.
Are there other council members with questions? I do have some additional ones. V, did you have any comments?
Is that 100% construction drawings? I'm just curious.
They don't appear to be, but I'd like to discuss that.
Yeah.
I believe that they are, and David, I don't want to speak for you, but about 80% done. And then taking into consideration the comments today, they'll finalize them.
That's correct.
It looks like there was also something in the schedule within the grant application for finalizing in the spring, particularly on the spec side.
I saw that too.
Yeah, just as a general comment, the drawings seem very light. There are very few sections. There's no section through the mid portion of the wing walls. There's no details of how it actually connects to the building. There are little things like railings don't kind of comport with the elevations versus the plans. So there's a lot in the drawings themselves that I think could make it possible for somebody to actually build it. That you have a section through the piers with the finials on them, but not through the intermediate sections of the walls. There was a comment in the initial conditions assessment about the step right out the front door is not a code compliant condition, and if we're actually rebuilding the entire staircase, should that be addressed? So you have a door, a landing right at that door that you come out and then go down the run. So just some tightening up of what's happening.
Yeah, I do want, I would like to just point out that this isn't a full demolition of the entire piece and a full recreation. We are working with the structure that's there and redoing the brick work, so we can embellish on those details and sort of differentiate between that. But I just wanted to point out this isn't a full demolition of the existing. We are reworking with what is there and working around that structure. So we're not excavating out the full footings and foundations. But I'm happy to continue, you know, as we mentioned, develop those final details to, you know, to have those ready for bid.
Because it looked like you were replacing everything, you know, so the existing stair plan demolition, everything is dashed. So it gives the impression that everything is being removed and being reconstructed. So I think there needs to be a little bit more clarity. So
Yeah.
there's known scope. So that's why we were asking about whether or not these are 100% construction documents, because they didn't feel as though they were quite there yet.
Yeah, understood. It's essentially the stairs that we're replacing. We're keeping the walls and the superstructure. So we will clarify that.
And same things with like the drainage at the bottom of the stair that was called out in the conditions assessment. And there's nothing indicated on these drawings that any of that is being addressed. Okay, any further comments or questions? Hearing none. Who got kicked out?
David Stein. I just thought a second.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know. Something happened. I got disconnected.
Hopefully it wasn't something I said.
No, not at all.
Okay, we'll go ahead with the roll call vote. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Via Duce,
Aye.
Beth Burgess,
Aye.
I'll abstain. Thea Glazer,
Hi.
Andy Horowitz,
Aye.
and Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you. So hopefully we can just get that set tightened up. So there are fewer questions during construction. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Moving to our next item, 5B, new action items, 5B1. I'll read the motion. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant is New London Landmarks, and the project consulting services of an CFR qualified architectural historian to prepare a National Register nomination for the Antone Desant houses circa 1835, located at 745 to 753 Bank Street, New London. And the amount is $18,000. Could I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion, Andy.
Thank you, Andy. And a second?
I second V.
Thank you, V.
Great.
Discussion?
All right, good morning, everybody. It's Mary. Happy New Year. Staff does recommend approval of this application. Our NR coordinator, Jenny, did do a site visit in November and met with Laura Natush, who's also on the call. So we think these have significance and merit investigation and doing an NR nomination for them. And the budget was also arrived at in consultation with our office. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And if I can't, we've got Jenny and Laura on the line as well.
I'll start with one question, Mary.
Yep.
It was my previous understanding that it was not possible for an outside organization to apply for a grant to do a National Register nomination. Is that not the case?
For National Register nominations or state register or, well, local districts as well, anybody can do a nomination. Obviously, you need owner
Permission,
consent,
right.
which
Does
I think
it depend on
Laura-
the type? Does it depend on the type of property?
No, it can be individual or it can be, well, if it's a district, then there's an actual opportunity for owners to support or object. In this case, Laura, I believe, has been working with the current owner and submitted a letter of consent in the application. So we feel confident that there's not going to be, spending of money to, and then having it, pulled at the last minute. So so yes, anybody can do a National Register nomination, and we can give a grant to a municipality or nonprofit organization to get that done.
Okay, because I think this came up once before. I had a question, and the impression that I got was that, a historical society could not get a survey and planning grant to do a nomination for a private residence, for example. So.
No, yeah, I mean, most properties are, yeah.
I can
Private.
help. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. A nonprofit can apply to nominate a property. When they're seeking grant funds, though, we just ask for owner consent first if it's a private property. So if it's an individually nominated private property, we wouldn't want to go through the grant process if the owner was objecting. So Mary usually collects a letter from the owner. In the Descent houses, the owner was very supportive and very much involved. For districts, we recently started insisting on doing a community meeting before a grant application to gauge property owner sentiment and let them know that the municipality of the nonprofit is thinking of doing a grant application.
Hey, thanks for that clarification. And one other question, sorry, Council. As we've seen recently, if the motivation is to impart a greater level of protection from demolition in the future, are there other venues also available, such as granting a preservation easement, say to New London landmarks, that would actually have something on the land records where there would be a greater level of protection, because we know that the SEPA process does not always go forward and achieve the goals that the owner might work. There are challenges when anybody puts a restriction on their land records, because you can do anything you want as long as you can find a buyer who's interested in accepting those conditions. But it just seems as though if the ultimate goal is the long-term preservation of these properties, I think there are some stronger options out there that are worth consideration.
I think you're you're correct that a restriction that was handed over to somebody like New London Landmarks or Preservation Connecticut would certainly be a lot stronger. There'd be no question. There'd be no debate. If there was a demolition, proposed, even if it was a locally designated property, that doesn't, that's strong protection, but it's not always guaranteed, like SEPA. But I would think that its National Register designation would, I mean, in the case of Preservation Connecticut, they will hold easements only on properties that are listed on the National Register. They won't. I don't think they just take an easement on any property. So I would imagine some sort of designation would be desirable on the part of anybody that took the easement, at least a preservation nonprofit like New London Landmarks. So I think that the nomination is important in that respect. And it also obviously offers financial incentives, that we can review and ensure that, not that it's just not demolished, but that it's also maintained or rehabbed in a sensitive manner or an appropriate manner.
Right. Similar to SHPO's having the easements for the grant funding for a period of time, it just seems as though if we're expending monies to get the nomination listed, and as we know, there's no 100% guarantee that it will not be demolished in the future. It's sort of, if there was a comparable level of protection for an easement, I think if the ultimate goal truly is to preserve the buildings, setting it in stone, so to speak, I think is a worthwhile consideration. I'll open up to other council members. I didn't want to hog the whole show here.
I don't necessarily have any any sort of feedback comments, but it was a great grant application and seems like a worthy and exciting project. So I'm in support of it.
Any further comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll move to the roll call vote. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Pia Duce,
Aye.
Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer,
Aye.
Andy Horowitz,
Aye.
and Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. We wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank you from New London Landmarks.
Next item, agenda 5B2. I'll read the motion. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant is the City of Ansonia and the project consulting services of a CFR qualified architect / engineering team to prepare a conditions assessment of the Ansonia Opera House, built in 1870, located at 100 Main Street, Ansonia. The amount requested is $20,000. Could I have a
No.
motion?
It's not 20,000. Well, I'm sorry.
Mary?
Yep.
Mary,
The form that I have for City of Ansonia, it says it's a $20,000.
It is a $20,000 grant. Is there a,
It's a $66,000 total project, but our grant is only
Right.
a $20,000
okay,
grant
Yeah.
amount.
okay.
exactly?
Okay. Could I have a motion to approve?
Beth
Lee.
Ackley makes a motion to approve.
Thank you. And a second?
Andy will second it.
Thank you, Andy.
All right. Thank
Mary.
you. All right. Good morning again. So yes, staff does recommend approval of this application. The town was actually encouraged by our office to do this because there is some needed work as kind of outlined in the application, and we would like to be part of that, help them plan a project that meets the standards. As noted, the total project cost is a little, $66,000. That was arrived at by not consulting with, I don't believe, any architects that might bid on it, but just sort of a general verbal ballpark by a couple of different folks. And as also noted, hopefully our 20,000 will help, and they'll come up with the rest of that budget on their own. The town of Ansonia is here, including Sheila O'Malley and somebody else, I believe. If you have any questions that I can't answer.
Mary, could you just go over things just so council members are aware when the city has a lease of the building or any other organization has a lease? How does that work with
Yeah.
grant supports?
Mary, if you want, John Marini, our corporation counsel, is here, and Walt Kajerski, who's the owner of the Opera House. But John can talk about the agreement that we have with the private owner that the city of Ansonia has, if you'd like quickly.
It's up to Paul, I guess.
First, I would just like to hear from Mary just to see
Sure.
what our
In
procedure
general.
is in general,
Yeah.
and then
So, yeah, and that'd be great if there's any clarification needed. So we offer grants to municipalities and nonprofits. The building needs to be owned by the applicant, or the applicant needs to be in a long-term lease, meaning at least 20 years. And it can be, one of those, dollar a year things. Just as long as there's some an identified owner. Now, municipalities actually can also apply for funding if they have not a financial interest necessarily in the disposition of the building, but if it is a building with critical issues that for which, pre-development and subsequently rehab would be, beneficial in the context of their their preservation planning with the consent of the owner. So that is another not wrinkle, but another layer of that. But in general, our first two questions are, is it listed and who owns it? And so the owner does need to be either the outright owner or somebody in a long-term agreement.
Thank you, Mary. I just wanted all the council members to kind of get up to speed on, what the eligibility requirements are. Okay, are there further questions from council members?
I had a quick question. I saw in the
Beth?
narrative that there were some concerns about cracking in the brick. And I don't think I saw, I could have missed it, but I don't think I saw any photos of that. Are those things that are high up that might need an aerial lift to investigate them? How are you thinking about those as far as investigation?
Yep, and through you, Mr. Chairman. So the city working with the owner, we had to do some patching up of the windows, the exterior, and we were just talking about that. We had to get a bucket truck high enough up on the building to install or improve some of the windows. So yes, we're planning on coordinating with a crane company that has a bucket truck tall enough to get up there and inspect.
Is that where you're seeing the cracking is high up?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council member questions?
I have one, Paul, just out of
Thank you, Beth
curiosity.
Burgess.
Thank you. How long has the building been unoccupied or used as, or not used as the Opera House?
Through the chair.
Yes.
The city's essentially seen this unoccupied from its primary use since likely the 50s. The building has been essentially dormant, used in a makeshift manner for occasionally a doctor's office. I think there was roller skating going on in the 70s, gymnastics and drum lessons. So this has not truly been used as an opera house or even a community forum since the 50s. And honestly, very briefly, city would like to say it's very thankful to be before you with this possibility to make progress on this project. We're here with the owner, Walt Konjerski, who is the defender and the protector of this property. For decades, it's been in his family, and he has some very successful storefronts that are actually consist of the outer shell of the building, the ground level. The Opera House has essentially been mothballed for really since the 70s. Yeah. He's got multiple offers to convert this to apartments, to residential, and he has resisted on the off chance that a potential could come forward to restore it to its primary use as a community center, opera house, back to its historic use. The city is very excited to be partnering with him on a 30-year lease, which we see as just the beginning of this potential, to work together to facilitate a very optimistic end goal of restoring this back to the center of the downtown community. And yes, back to its historic use as an opera house. We want to thank especially Mary Dunn for helping us shepherd this project along. But the entire community is behind this project, from Walt, the owner, to the business community downtown, to Sheila and our economic development office, to our entire board of aldermen, and even a group of volunteers that have helped clean the property and present it in a way to attract new eyes and new interest. And so we're very thankful to be before you, and we can truly say this is a public-private partnership in a very, very concrete, long-term manner.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for that history. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Just have one other quick question going back to, the physical bones of the structure. Are there any, is the building envelope, pretty tight as far as leaking goes right now, or are there some areas where there's some ongoing leaking?
Water infiltration.
No, there's no water.
Good roof, right?
Yeah.
Put a
So
new
far,
roof.
everything's been good.
And even recently, we've had some very high, high moisture days and high rain. Even today, actually, overnight, we had quite an issue with rain. And we're not seeing even to this day any real leaks or
Nothing,
anything at
nothing.
all.
We do think though that the shell of the building is obviously the first order of business, you know, the windows, the doors, and making sure that there's no continued cracking, the brick repointing, et cetera. So city's had a lot of experience with some of these older buildings.
Our city hall here has had much more problems with water than
Yeah.
this opera house.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, since there are no more questions, we'll move ahead with the vote. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Via Ducey,
Aye.
Beth Burgess,
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer,
Aye.
Andy Horowitz,
Aye.
and Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
Motion carries. We wish you well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Next item, 5B3. The Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant is the Chester Public Library. The project is the repointing on stone wings, thorough cleaning and sealing of exterior, and a boiler replacement. The amount requested is $12,800, which is 50% of the total budget. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion, Leah.
Thank you, Leah. And a second?
Second, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Discussion?
Thank you. So the Chester Public Library worked with their local building official and fire marshal, and based on that report, he noted that there needed to be repointing of the building, cleaning and sealing, and also that they desperately needed a new boiler. So the scope of work is listed in the application, and the library did get several informal quotes to develop their budget. So I've listed those there. And the only other note was that I will recommend gentle power washing. So that is that presentation. And I think there's somebody from Chester Public Library on, it should be the library director.
Thank you, Erin. I had one question about, specifically about the type of mortar and the sealant. I looked briefly at the spec sheets. I looked them up online.
Yep.
And in general, I just want to say that I'm very concerned that an appropriate breathable, vapor permeable sealer be used. And it's compatible with the types of stone that are on the building, because some of the products that were mentioned were suitable for concrete.
Okay.
Don't mention stone at all. And
Okay.
others say don't use on anything like limestone. So I think that needs a little bit further tender loving care to make sure that an appropriate material is being used.
Okay.
I see Beth Ackley's hand is raised.
Yes, hi. Sort of piggybacking on Paul's comments. Has a professional been involved at all to understand what the root causes of some of this is? Because a lot of times that really dictates what the treatments are. Typically sealing, even with a breathable sealer, is not an effective treatment if the root cause isn't being, being addressed, and the root cause could be anything from, water not being managed on the roof to, improper harder mortars being used relative to the bedding mortar to, flashings not being there, allowing water in. And so, I think in my practice and opinion, understanding the root cause of why we're getting buildup on the masonry, why we're getting cracking is really essential to determining, is it a sealer issue? Typically it's not. Typically we want to address the water, not getting in another way. And then just to also piggyback on Paul's point, mortar selection is everything, and it takes a little bit of understanding of what the original mortar is in order to properly specify what the new mortar is, not just in color, but in material. We don't want to use something that's harder or less permeable than the substrate and the mortar behind. And so I think I would certainly recommend a professional look to make sure that the materials that are being specified are appropriate and that the root cause is being addressed.
Okay, so I think I would be a proponent for maybe tabling this for a meeting or two, so that we can get maybe a TAC grant through Preservation Connecticut to have somebody come out and take a look and see if they can identify the root causes and some more detail about the mortar. And then, so that'll be in the winter, so they can still do construction when it's warmer anyways, but just getting that additional information I think will help us with the bid package, and I would feel more comfortable based on what you're saying and Paul is saying about mortar, being so important.
Yeah,
if that's okay.
And
That's
then we'd
wise.
have the opportunity to revise the funding amount if necessary to make sure we get the right solution.
Okay. Yep.
And I think I echo that too, because based on the pictures, these damages, whether it's the leaks or the cracks, they seem very severe. So I think understanding the roots is significant. I also didn't understand all the cost that was listed. So maybe something more clear. Not so much of the furnace replacement, that seems pretty straightforward, but it seems like in the room there's some additional work that might be worth looking at.
Okay.
Just to make sure that the cost is all inclusive.
Sure. Okay, so I'll flesh out the budget a bit more too. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think if we could table for 2 meetings, that would give enough time for a TAC grant. And hopefully we can get one and get somebody out there in time.
Are there any, imminent issues with the heating system? Because, it seems like it was limping along. I just don't want to have a situation where that doesn't go through. I mean, I guess one strategy would be to, I don't know if we can bifurcate the proposal or give it approval for the boiler portion and pending funding of the mortar and ceiling, just so we don't want them to be left without heat as we're right in the middle of winter right now.
Right. I see Stephanie now. Stephanie, how is the boiler doing this winter?
Far so good. It's hanging in there. So we have had no heat issues currently.
Knock on wood, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If that's the case, keep informed with them, Aaron. So if something does happen on an emergency basis, we can get it sooner than the other investigation is resolved. We don't want to leave them hanging.
Right. Okay.
I would normally turn to Sarah or Tom about official, tabling the motion. Do I have to vote on the initial thing as a no to table, or
I have no idea.
Jonathan?
I think you simply, excuse me, I think you can propose a new motion to replace the existing one to table.
Okay.
Somebody can make a motion to replace the existing motion with a new one.
and the March meeting looks like it would be March 6th. So I think you would say until that meeting.
Actually, I guess it would be a revision of the existing motion, Paul.
Okay. Who wants to take that on? If I can, I guess I can, but I'm not sure if that's kosher. But let's see. I'd like to make a motion, since I will keep things moving along here, to revise the current standing motion to table until the March 6th meeting in order to have additional investigation and appropriate root causes for mortar and sealing of the exterior. Do I have a second?
Beth Ackley, second.
Okay, roll call vote. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
V?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
I guess I will abstain. Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
And Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
The motion's tabled. And hopefully we'll just get this through quickly so we can get you all buttoned up and stay warm.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is 5B4. Mary, I would just double check, or Aaron, on my printout it actually said 5B3 on the actual form, so that needs to be corrected.
Is that you mean on the motion itself?
On
I
the
put
motion
wrong
itself.
one?
Oh,
Yeah,
wrong
there are
one.
two
Sorry.
5B3s
Okay.
on the actual motion. So 5B4. Historic Restoration Fund, the Winton-Berry Historical Society. The Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below-listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below-listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant is the Winton-Berry Historical Society, and the project is the replacement of wooden gutters, repair of existing fascias and soffits, prime and paint gutters and cornices, restoration of 22 wooden windows, and the addition of 22 storm windows on the old farm school. Amount requested is $75,000. Can I have a motion to approve?
V.
Thank you, V. And a second?
Beth Burgess.
Thank you, Beth Burgess. Discussion?
All right, so in 2019, architect Bob Hurd conducted a conditions assessment. He identified several projects that needed further investigation, but he also identified several more straightforward, discrete projects like carpentry repairs to the wooden gutters, the soffits, the cornices, and the rehab or replacement of 22 wooden windows and storm windows. So you will see, and I wrote this in the summary, but just to clarify, you will see the items that were identified as projects that need further investigation, hopefully at the next meeting with a survey and planning grant. But this work is just for the work that was very straightforward, like the windows and the carpentry repairs. So in order to get the budget, we added up their informal quotes and just sort of took the average there. And any overage, the Historical Society understands that they would need to cover. So any questions? John is on the line and I will try to help as well.
Thank you, Aaron. I have one question. I'm looking at the several estimates that were provided.
Yep.
Only one of them specifically mentioned interior storm windows. The other three were all for exterior storm windows. So I'm not sure what, it seems like the number is a generic number and they haven't chosen which route they're going. Is that correct?
Yes, I think when I was talking to Bob, I think he prefers exterior just to keep the window a bit safer from, outside elements. But since it's a museum, he wasn't sure whether they wanted to do interior just to kind of hide it and make it easier to remove. So I think they're still kind of ironing that out.
Okay.
I also had a comment. The spread for the estimates
Pete.
that came in looks pretty staggered, anywhere from 80 to 200. And I know that you went with the medium because you were trying to move forward with the estimate, but it gets to be very critical to really understand, especially with the scope of work, supply chain price increase. So it's just a recommendation to really understand the scope of work, make sure that everybody's bidding the same thing, and that the material costs are being verified to make sure that the owner doesn't get themselves into any unnecessary trouble. But it looks like the spread was pretty significant. So take a look at that
Yeah,
again.
that's a really good comment. I was surprised to see the differences in quotes. And Bob Hurd, who is the architect, plans to help with the bidding to develop the bid package and the bid process and management. So he's been really great with other projects in the past and making sure that everyone sort of bids the same work.
Yeah.
And then it just noted that the numbers from his initial conditions assessment versus the bids that are coming back are vastly different. So
yes.
Yeah, it kind of supports our previous comments about whether or not it's worthwhile having a better level of estimating during the conditions assessment process to make sure that we're getting closer to the real numbers versus not getting there. Other questions from council members?
Just one quick, it's just supporting what everybody else is saying, and I know, as Aaron said, Bob Hurd will work through this, but it may be that one of the differences in these bids is what the actual approach is to the wood window restoration. There are, in my limited experience as a structural engineer, and sort of seeing some of these, if you leave a contractor to it, some will specify new hardware, weather stripping and things to keep the elements out and improve them. And others will just literally just work on the actual wood itself. And some will do it in situ and some will take it out. So just honing in on exactly what the expectation is and the want is in regard to those things, I think will help narrow the pricing in, because if you leave it to a contractor, they all approach wood window restoration in different ways, I've found.
Yeah, there has to be a consistent scope of work, and even the price sheets has to be, because everybody was pricing in their own how they view it as the work needs to be done. So that becomes complicated.
This is John Capadonna from the Winterberry Historical Society. Is it okay if I ask a question, or?
Yeah.
Hi. I agree that spread is pretty wide. I have a feeling that one of them was from a contractor who really wasn't interested in the job and didn't come in to inspect the property and so on. So that was a real outlier. But that being said, I hope, yeah, it doesn't seem realistic to me being so far off from the lowest or even from the mean. But since there is a spread, and I would say that spread is probably between 80 and 150,000. Does that sound right, Aaron?
Yes.
Something like that. How do you judge how much to grant? Or do you, I'm just curious. How does that work?
Well, that's why I sort of took the average there to do a request and to have the budget justification. And Bob can sort of outline how much money you have to work with to see what can get done. There's also the possibility that if it does come in much higher, we can go back before the council to request additional funds based on the quotes you get. So there's a couple different options there.
Oh, thanks.
But also, Aaron, conversely, if it comes in at $80,000 and we've approved, it's a 50% grant, right?
Right.
As part of the grant process, you have to submit the actual expenditures, and it would be up to that 75,000 to be the 50% match. So you can always come back for more, but if it comes in less, it doesn't reduce the 50-50 split.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. I will say, the building that my office is in, they're actually going through this same process of taking out all of the sash, and they have triple hung wood sashes from the 1870s, and they were taken out to the shop, all of the glass taken out, full wood restoration, glass put back in, weather stripping, painting frames. So when you go that route, it does increase the cost versus popping a sash out on site.
Right.
Putting a little epoxy on and putting it right back in, so it can be dramatic difference in overall cost.
Mhm.
All right. Any further questions? If not, we'll proceed with a roll call vote. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Via Duce,
Aye.
Beth Burgess,
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah,
Aye.
Andy Horowitz,
Aye.
and Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
The motion carries. We wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Moving right along. Item 6B1, new action item. It's a state register nomination for the Casia Farm Barn at 310 Highland Street in Weathersfield to the State Register of Historic Places. The Historic Preservation Council votes to list the Casia Farm Barn located at 310 Highland Street, Weathersfield, to the State Register of Historic Places. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Beth Burgess.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second it, Andy.
Thank you, Andy. Discussion.
Good morning. This is Marina Wisniewski, State Register Coordinator. Staff recommends approval of listing of the Keisha Farm Barn located at 310 Highland Street, Weathersfield, to the State Register of Historic Places under Criterion 1 at the local level in the areas of agriculture and ethnic history as a dairy barn constructed by Polish immigrants who were part of a historical trend of Eastern European immigrants who found success in farming in the United States. There have been alterations to the barn, but it retains the majority of its location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association with its agricultural history in the town of Weathersfield and as a supplier of dairy products to the nearby city of Hartford. Stacy Vero worked on the nomination. I believe she might be here. Also present is the mayor of Weathersfield, Ken Lesser. If he had to leave, my apologies. Town manager Fred Presley, and members of the Keisha Barn Committee, past and present, Cynthia Greenblatt and Jim Woodward.
Thank you, Marina. I'm sorry I mispronounced the word. My Polish roots go back too far. So
Polska.
It's only a quarter. So
That's okay.
and any comments from council members?
I have a
Beth Ackley?
yes, Beth Ackley. I have a comment that is this is not my this is not, the forte in my work, so correct me if I'm way off, but is there any place in this nomination for anchoring it in a post-war depression time period at all? Is there any relationship to that with the history?
So I think that with the construction period of this barn, they didn't specifically root it in Depression era agricultural farming, only because of the date of significance as our construction is around 1940 when we're entering the war effort. So we're moving out of the Depression. And also because it's a very locally focused nomination. But I think we could probably add a couple of sentences. The original author of the nomination, Elizabeth, has moved on from her position. But I think what we could do is we could add a couple of lines about, agriculture during the war period, during the Second World War, the idea of victory gardens, things like that, the push of agriculture in the local context. We could add a couple of that. They were primarily doing dairy farming at the time, but we certainly could provide a context that, their neighbors were doing some local agriculture that they eventually found to be more profitable. As you saw later, once that dairy farming production just declined so rapidly. And what's really, important, I think, about this property is that it really was the last dairy farm, not for commercial purposes. They were the third last dairy farm for commercial purposes, but really the last dairy farm in the town. And really, this is a really scarce resource. But yes, Beth, I think we can add a couple of lines in there.
Awesome. Thanks, Marina.
Other questions? Leah, did you have any observations?
No, I just thought it was pretty well written. I like the idea of making those small additions, but I was happy with it historically and stuff.
Thank you. Any other?
Well, if I may, I just
Beth,
want to second
Burgess.
that emotion as well. I really appreciated the ethnic community discussion and how it links with religion as well. It's not often we see that. So I was appreciative of it. Thank you.
It was a really great nomination, and the nomination's been a long time coming. So it's been in the process for a long time. So we're very happy with it.
Thank you. Here, since I don't see any other hands raised or comments, we can proceed with the vote. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Via Ducey,
Aye.
Beth Burgess,
Aye.
I'll abstain. Leah Glazer,
Aye.
Andy Horowitz,
Aye.
and Sarah Sportman.
Sorry.
Did we
Aye.
Thank you, Sarah.
Get my mic on.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, Jim and Cindy and Town of Weathersfield.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay. We're moving right along, Leah, keeping you on schedule. Our next item is item 11, the report of the State Historic Preservation Officer. So turning over to Jonathan.
Good morning. Thank you, Paul. I wanted to back up one step. Paul, Todd did offer to give HPC an overview of the latest SEPA item and answer any questions you might have. So if you wanted to do that first,
yes, let's go back to item 9, the threatened property SEPA update from Todd Levine.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Todd Levine. And you may know that we had a historic HPC referral to the OAG for Waterford, for 80 Shore Road in Waterford. You may know also that the Attorney General has declined to pick it up and the building has been demolished. The official statement from the OAG is, for reasons supported by the architectural assessments in the public record, the OAG will not seek an injunction to prevent the proposed demolition of 80 Shore Road. I wanted to, give people an opportunity to ask me any questions about why or how we got to that decision. You all know that next week we have training with the Attorney General's office for, your guys' role in potential Protection Act cases. And we're going to get certainly some clarification moving forward next week. But I wanted to, just be here to answer any questions. So, you guys are just understand kind of how we got there. Before I open it up, I'll just say, the basic reason that they declined to pick it up has to do with due process. One of the issues is they felt that the owner had acted in good faith to do due process. He asked for the local municipal historian if this would be a problem. He had his legal counsel, which was a land use lawyer, find out if there are any restrictions. Ultimately, I think the fault lies there. He talked to the town manager, and then he talked to the municipal historian a second time. So four levels of requesting, is this going to be a problem to demo the site? And each time, he was told that there will not be a problem. Now, that does not, excuse knowing state law, local municipal historians, or even the local municipal planning department or building official is not required to know state law when it comes to preservation. Their land use lawyers should have. But it does show that he had an intent of doing due process, and he did all that before purchase. And then the second issue, I think, is that, our historic architect had suggested demoing, the wings and keeping the main block of the building. The main block of the building is in fact outside of the period of significance, whereas the wings are what makes the site important. Obviously, they all work together. But I think that suggestion, in a way to set up a compromise for the owner, kind of threw the Attorney General's office off their game a little bit. I think they thought, well, now we have a conflict from what the State Review Board had suggested, which is that it is all historic and should all theoretically, it all still contributes to the district. And then the solution from the historic architect was demo the parts of it that make it significant, at least within the period of significance for the National Register nomination, was a problem. So I think we learned a little bit from that process. We ask our structural engineers and our historic architects not to look at these scenarios with any kind of judgment. We want them to look at them purely neutral. We don't want them to say, well, this should be saved because it's historic. We don't want to influence it at all. Our role in our investigation is neutral as we can be, being the SHPO. But we want to bring just the facts to you guys, and you guys make those determinations based on those facts. And the same thing for the AG's office. They make their determinations based on facts, not on, the role of historic preservation in this process. So anyway, I just wanted to open it up and give you a little bit of background and let you guys ask any questions so that we can clear the air. And then, obviously we're going to have training next week where we're going to talk about maybe this a little bit more in depth, but certainly your role in this process more in depth. Thanks.
Thank you, Todd. Just a quick question. Did they salvage anything beyond the doors, the painted doors?
I'm sorry?
Did they salvage any?
No, I don't know.
Building other than the painted doors that they mentioned
They
in
said
the
they were
initial
going
discussion?
to. Yeah, they said they were going to. They also broke the moratorium, right? The moratorium was the 23rd. On the 19th, they started demoing. The AG's office was not pleased. But because, we had all decided that it's going to come down, they were not going to sue for breach of contract. But at that point, we had not had, we as in SHPO, and I'm guessing the OAG have not had further contact with the owners on whether they're going to do what they said they were going to do.
Thank you. And Beth Ackley?
Todd, have the conversations with OAG changed in any way as personnel has changed?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, in the past we had Alan, who was our, kind of, preservation knight in shining armor, dedicated to SHPO, and DOT was his job. They've since changed internally. They don't have that, they don't have an attorney assigned to a department any longer like they used to, or an office like SHPO or DCD. They just don't have it. They have, they lost a lot of folks when the retirement thing happened 2 years ago. And they're still replacing folks. They're still under their operating number, is my understanding. In the past, I talked to Alan, weekly or, at least a couple times a month on preservation matters, just generally over the last 10 years. They do not do that. They actually are not going to be having, conversations with us on potential SEPA matters prior to a referral at all. Right. They said, we're not going to, I'm like, hey, can I get some legal advice? They're like, nope. Not to say, they wouldn't, but, the general process is they're not going to discuss a potential SEPA matter until it's been referred by HPC to their office. General, other legal matters certainly, but not for potential Protection Act cases. And in fact, I suggested we talk more with our own legal counsel for that kind of thing.
Wow.
At DCD.
And is there then, is there more of an onus on you and maybe us to state some of the preservation philosophy that might have just been implied before?
I don't think it would hurt. I think that, we, Jonathan and I, and Marina are going to be having, discussions with the AG's office as we kind of develop some clear procedural papers on every step of every step and every expectation from both them and us on this process. We want to be real transparent as we move forward. We want the public to know how these processes work anyway. I mean, we have a document that we send out, but I think there's been some confusion on what each step requires. In the past, we've used case law, case studies of prior SEPA cases as examples of what could be a prudent and feasible alternative. And one of those has always been sell the building. It happened in Wallingford 15 years ago. They sold the building. The judge ruled that that's a prudent and feasible alternative. Sell to somebody who cares. I think each site and each potential case is different. And, that potential prudent and feasible alternative is not as strong as it used to be, I think, with this current administration. That's not to say that the actual Attorney General has not been preservation minded. When he first got on, we had Willimantic. And, at that time, even Alan said, I don't think we're going to pick this up. And next thing you knew, the Attorney General was all over it. And he's been an ally, I think, to preservation over the years. Attorney General Pong. So, has things changed? Absolutely. Is the onus more on us? I think we have to be clear on how we push that because, our role, at least maybe not HPC's role. And I think we're going to get some clarification in that in training next week, but certainly SHPO's role is going to be neutral in terms of we bring facts to you. You guys determine if there's, enough. We're going to, Preservation Connecticut is not neutral, right? They are on the side of preservation. So they're, Brad or, who Preservation Connecticut's 20-minute opening talk about why the site is important and what the prudent and feasible alternatives. I think that has a bigger role than maybe in years past, or at least it's been clarified to our office from OAG when we talked about this, is how important that has to be.
I wonder if, last comment here, there's a place for preserving that institutional memory. If there's some document that's being developed, maybe like listing out those case studies so that as new, fresh people come in, that's always there as a reference that kind of follows the case along, for reference or whatever.
Yeah, I think we're going to add, we have an internal document that we have from 1991 that when we share the agenda with y'all, it'll include it. It has the case studies from the case law from the 90s. And it's interesting, not the 90s, the 80s. And it's interesting to read some of these cases. A lot of them failed, which is pretty interesting. But, we've evolved. The relationship that we have with the Attorney General's office has evolved from when it started in really in the 80s. But when this process of our partnership started, the onus was really on, organizations, nonprofit organizations, to be kind of the lead, and then they bring us in. Right. And then now it's changed that we've taken kind of the lead. It begins with Preservation Connecticut generally. But we as SHPO do the investigation because we have the ability to get some more of the facts than the nonprofit would. So, it's changed, and we don't have a document. I don't have a document with all those, but that's not a bad idea, Beth. I've thought about that too, is having just a list of all the laws, the case studies from SEPA cases that would be kind of easy to get to right at your fingertips. So that is something that we thought about. It's a good idea.
Thanks. I look forward to the training next week.
And Todd, we'll bring this up more in that training session, but just so everybody's clear, the OAG is not the only party that can bring a SEBA case, right? It's just a matter of if you did have an organization that wanted to file, they would be liable for the costs. So
if they lose, yes.
If they lose. Yeah, right. So there is another venue for doing preservation, especially when you're up against timelines. It makes things difficult. But the OAG is not the only venue for pursuing a case. So if there is an instance where it really is, let's say, a political hot potato, where the OAG's office does not want to take something on, anyone has standing in the state of Connecticut to bring a SEBA case. That's
Exactly
my understanding.
Yep, exactly so.
Okay, thank you, Todd.
Thanks.
Now we'll jump back to item 11 with Jonathan's report.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Jonathan Kinney with the SHPO. Thank you for doing that, Todd. I'm going to follow right up and talk a little bit about the logistics for the training next week. So we do have, it is a go. We are scheduled for next Thursday, January 18th, and that is going to be virtual on Microsoft Teams, just like our regular meetings. It is scheduled from 12 noon to 1. And we are going to have Rosemary Weber and John Russo from the Office of the Attorney General joining us. We have also extended our invitation to the State Review Board, which is our other board that we work with regularly, as they do have a role in the process sometimes when we are evaluating whether or not a property still contributes or is still eligible ahead of moving forward with a SEPA item. So they will be joining us as well, at least some of them. And I've also invited Executive Director Jane Montanaro from Preservation Connecticut to join us as well, as they are often a party to these items. So we are very much looking forward to that. I hope most of you can make it. We will certainly record that if anyone cannot, and can share that with you after the event. Just wanted to touch base quickly on 2 other trainings I had mentioned at the last meeting. The first was training on Concurs, which is our new GIS system. It does look like we are going to have an official launch date later in this month. So look to maybe later in February, once we've rolled out some trainings, we'll get you guys queued up and make that available to anyone on council who's interested. And then we had also finally talked about doing a sort of quick round robin type training for council as well with SHPO staff. I think I'm going to bump that out to February a little bit just to spread some of these trainings out. But we will certainly do that. And I'm looking at maybe just a weekday lunchtime type webinar for that format. And I will follow up more with you on that. Please let me know if you have any questions, and thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Do we have Liz with us?
You do.
We do.
Have me with you. Sorry. Hi, everybody. Liz Shapiro, Director of Arts Preservation and Museums. So just wanted to give you a couple of updates on the museums because good things are happening. Yesterday, I mentioned this at the December meeting, but yesterday we had a great joint staff meeting with the staff at the Museum of Connecticut History. And for those of you who don't know, your colleague Beth Burgess is the curator there. We toured the museum. Many of my staff had not been there. This is the museum that's over at the State Library across from the Capitol, and discussed how we could work together more effectively. Specifically, we talked about some interesting, had interesting conversation on gun policy, historic guns for use and display. At our museums, we do have reenactors sometimes, and we're creating policies for them to be able to, that they'll, standards that they need to meet in order to actually have guns when they are doing reenactments. And also we talked about how you ethically display guns, and I'm going to just ping Leah. We talked about you, Leah, and I think folks are going to be reaching out to you more. We also talked about how we can work together for the 250th, and that was a really exciting conversation. Next week, our staff will be meeting with over at Dinosaur State Park, and we'll be meeting with the site manager over there, and with the hope of developing a more collaborative relationship with the deep managed museums. And so all this is all new and exciting. I wanted all of that to start about, 6 years ago, but you know what? You get there eventually. Drama at the Prudence Crandall Museum, as if the story isn't dramatic enough. And you have been hearing about the restoration for quite a while. Well, a significant portion of the new plaster ceiling fell in one of the rooms. No one was hurt, no one was there. It did destroy one of our panels. There are also DAS, Department of Administrative Services, who is sort of our construction manager, went out, as did the contractor who did the plaster. There are other ominous cracks in other rooms, and we are working on resolving that. So that's a thing that's going on right now, and I will keep you updated on that. For Newgate, we're excited to say that we received the 80% completion documents for the Save America's Treasures grant to stabilize the 4-story cell block, and now we're just awaiting approval from the National Park Service to go ahead with the full documents and drawings. I will tell you, just so you all know here, that this is going to involve removing and dismantling a portion of especially the high remaining cell block for the time being, and storing those bricks after documentation, because we don't have enough money right now to move forward with to create a stable environment. It's that far gone right now. So that is coming, and we will be talking about how to work appropriately with the public to manage expectations and to make that story a part of the interpretation on the site. We've completed the RFP for the restoration project at Beats Tavern, and that's, just as a reminder, the NPS grant for the semi-quincentennial. And we also have a contract signed by the state and the contractor, GEI, for the survey work to be done in the geotech survey work to be done in the mine at Newgate. And now we're awaiting the AG's final signature on that contract, which they have seen about 50 billion times. So hopefully they will sign it quickly, and we can get to scheduling this work for late March and early April, because we can't do it while the bats. We have to get the very quick shoulder season, so as not to disturb the bats, but so as to be able to open. We think, this is how I'm putting it, we think we finally cracked the code with HR for our museum seasonals, and they have been approved, and we're waiting them to be listed in CORE, which is our, the final frontier of approval. And hopefully we'll be able to compete with some other organizations that get their summer jobs out and listed very, very early, which is exciting. And then finally, 3 of our museums are working with DAS to take advantage of their program, which comes up, every 5 to 10 years, to do a hazardous materials assessment in state buildings at no cost to the agency who owns and manages the state buildings. And so we are hoping that we're already moving forward with Henry Whitfield, waiting on Newgate, and the application is going in from Prudence Crandall for the Carter House in particular, because that building that we own next door to the Prudence Crandall House has basically it needs some attention. And then if funds last for the program, there may be additional funds to do some follow-up actual mitigation work. So lots of things, even though it's the quiet time of year at the museums, lots of things moving forward. That's my report for today.
Thank you, Elizabeth Thackley. You have a question?
Liz, I'd love to just ask you a quick follow-up question. Any sense of why that plaster ceiling is failing at Prudence Crandall House?
Well, since it's only 6 months, old. Well, there's a little bit of a dispute. So the contractor says it's because the beams are settling. He is a very well-known plaster contractor and has worked in many, many historic buildings. So I feel that it's a little odd that our beams are settling, and that is a problem that he has never encountered before. But we feel that there may be something about the plaster not actually being attached to the ceiling, correct?
Not keyed in well, maybe.
Correct. So, yeah. So we're having conversations, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to win because this is not acceptable. So I'm not really worried. I'm kind of looking forward to this one. I will say we have a great proponent at DAS now. We have not had great proponents there. This one is like, there's other cracks. This has all got to be redone. So there's like a little bit of a disaster waiting to happen since we're waiting to open, but and it's of course out of warranty. So, but that's also another discussion because if the work is faulty, then in essence, the that time does not affect.
Sounds like you're on it, Liz.
Yeah. I'm always curious, what are the questions? Are they going to be about plaster falling? Are they going to be about the gun thing? Like, there's a lot of like hot topics that we've been involved in. So.
Thank you, Liz. Moving right along. I don't know if there's any new business, Jonathan. So we've moved directly
I do
to.
not believe so.
Okay. Our liaison with public and private agencies is Jane Montanaro on today's call.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Jane
Hi, Jane.
Montanaro, Preservation, Connecticut. Hello. Just 2 announcements. Last call for nominations for the 2024 Connecticut Preservation Awards. We're accepting the nominations until February 2nd, 4 p.m. And there's a submission form on our website. It's free, a free form. And then we're also underway with planning for our Jane's Walk Connecticut Talks. Jane's Walk 2024, May 4th, 2024. So we had one planning meeting with community partners, and we're seeking any and all more community partners to please join us. We'll have another meeting on January 22nd. And in the meantime, we're asking folks to head to our website and put in the form your ideas for hosting a Jane's Walk. We're hoping to get quite a few going simultaneously in Connecticut this year and really celebrate the work of Jane Jacobs and celebrate all of the wonderful historic and cultural resources that we have in Connecticut. So thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Jonathan, were there any people that signed up for a public forum?
No.
No. Okay. That said, I don't think there are any other items on the agenda. I thank everybody for their participation today. Our next regularly scheduled council meeting is Wednesday, February 7th. And it would likely be also a Teams meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Beth Ackley, so moved.
And a second?
I'll second Andy.
Without objection, so moved. And we'll see you all in February, or actually next week for the CPET training. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. See you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.